and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Services Delegated Committee. My name is Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth and I chair this committee. Before we commence, I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent, please. Thank you. The Services Delegated Committee is being live streamed on the Council website, so you will be able to view the proceedings of the meeting and councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the Council website as soon as practicable after the meeting. Should technical problems be encountered, the meeting will be adjourned until the problem is rectified, or if need be, the meeting will be postponed. I will start by introducing my fellow councillors and officers. Seated to the left at the horseshoe table here in the chamber are Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Nick Stavrou, Councillor Wes Gold, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Sinfield. And seated to my right is Councillor Victor Franco, Councillor Susan Biggar, Councillor Di Gillies, and Councillor Jane Addis, our Mayor. The officers in attendance tonight, directly beside me on my right, is Phil Storer, Chief Executive Officer. Sitting behind Councillor Stavrou is Gail Power, Acting Director of Community Support. Also sitting to my left, behind Councillor Galt, is Christine White, Acting Director of Places and Spaces. And to my right, sitting behind Councillor Gillies, is Mans Bassi, Director for Customer and Transformation, Scott Walker, Director for Urban Living, and, going back to my left behind Councillor Stavrou is Amy Montagna, Chief Financial Officer, and Ashley Cam, sitting behind Councillor Gillies, is the Acting Executive Manager for People, Culture and Development. Directly to my left is Adele Thayer, Acting Manager of Governance and Legal, and Elizabeth Manu, Senior Governance Officer. There are also a number of officers in attendance this evening, and they will be introduced as they present their reports. The purpose of the Services Delegated Committee is to deal with issues relating to the provision of human and physical services and Council's infrastructure. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer. I will then call you one by one to come forward and address Council. When making a submission, you are requested to present your viewpoint clearly and concisely on why you agree or disagree with the proposal. You may suggest an alternate approach which will satisfy your concerns. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said, and please keep the discussion focused on the relevant issues. To manage time efficiently, there is a limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, and that includes councillors. I will ask speakers to stand at the lectern, or in this case, come and sit at the front of the horseshoe table. And at the 2.5 minute mark, I will ring a bell which will indicate you have 30 seconds remaining to conclude your presentation. After you have spoken, please remain seated at the table while I ask if any councillor has a question to ask you. Now we'll proceed with order of business. Apologies, Ms Tyre. Are there any apologies this evening?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have one apology this evening. Councillor Thompson is on a leave of absence.
Thank you. Item number 1, adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the Services Delegated Committee meeting held on the 14th of February 2022. Councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt and confirm the minutes? Mayor Addis.
I'm happy to do so, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Gillies?
Second, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? All right. As there is no one opposed, I will adopt the motion. Thank you. Item number 2, declaration of conflict of interest. Are there any councillors or council officers that wish to declare a conflict? I see there are none declared. Thank you. We'll move on to item 3, presentation of officers' reports. Item 3.1, child safe policy. I'd like to introduce Andrew McHugh, Manager for Health and Wellbeing Services.
Through you, Madam Chair. Council adopted the Child Safe policy in March 2021. Since then, a new set of child safe standards have been released, which we've incorporated into the updated Child Safe policy. The current 7 standards will be replaced by 11 standards. The changes have been made to support greater national consistency, and the Boroondara Child Safe policy has also been updated in line with the Boroondara Community Plan 2021-31. Subject to endorsement, the updated policy will complete Council's certification process with the Australian Childhood Foundation. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions for the officer? I see no lights on. Oh, Councillor Gillies.
Thank you, Chair. No question, just to foreshadow a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. At this stage, there is no question, so would you like to proceed with your motion?
Thank you, Chair. I propose the officer's recommendation as the motion. Are you happy for me to speak to it for a moment?
We'll just search for a seconder. Councillor Simfield.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Gillies.
Thank you. I just want to commend the officers because I think there's a lot of challenges in developing a policy that is really around preventing negative behaviours but developing good culture, and this includes the suppliers and contractors, so the broad scope of everybody involved in our organisation, volunteers, the whole gambit. This is a clear and thoroughly laid out policy, and it includes clarifying role boundaries, which I think is important for all parties, including councillors. It's very hard, as I say, to develop a good policy when you're actually trying to prevent misconduct. This fosters and raises expectations of shared responsibility, and I commend it to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Is there any other councillors that wish to speak to the motion? No? Thank you. Then we declare the motion has passed. Put the motion. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Supported. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.2, Victoria Park proposal, whether to remove gates on fence at Northern Oval. The officer presenting this is Paul Mitchell-Moore, Manager for Civic Services.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this paper is to present to councillors for consideration a summary of the feedback and assessment of the key findings identified from the community consultation on whether to remove the gates from the fence on the North Oval of Victoria Park queue. The report also assesses several other considerations relevant to Victoria Park and its shared usage amongst the various community groups. The key findings from community consultation and further considerations by officers are concluded with the recommendation to remove the gates from the fence on the North Oval. By way of background, Victoria Park in Kew is a sporting reserve used for community sport. It is also a shared space for passive exercise and recreation by local residents and visitors, as well as for dog owners to exercise their dog off lead. Multiple sporting clubs utilise Victoria Park as listed in the report and have a long-standing licence agreement with the Council for exclusive use for scheduled training and matches. Victoria Park, in recognition of its shared use, was designated under the order at Council over 14 years ago, allowing for dog owners to exercise dogs off lead. Approximately 5 years ago, gates were installed on the fence surrounding the North Oval, but without community consultation. This installation meant that Victoria Park North Oval became the only off-lead, fully enclosed sporting facility in our municipality. Since its installation and further over lockdowns during the pandemic, tensions grew between the sporting club members, some dog owners and other owners of the North Oval. Reports to Council indicated a lack of effective control over dogs generally, regular damage to playing surfaces, sporting equipment, personal items, dog owners not leaving grounds when organised sport commenced, and continual presence of dog faeces. Council has conducted extensive patrols and education over this period, especially the last 12 months. Improvement was noted, however, issues have persisted and Council continues to incur additional and ongoing expense to manage these issues. In December 2021, Council officers recommended that the gates on the North Oval be removed. Upon considering this, Council voted to go for further community consultation. In February 22, the community was invited to provide additional feedback on whether the gates on the North Oval should be removed. 697 submissions were received, in addition to a separate letter submitted on behalf of the tenant sporting clubs. Council officers have made several important considerations in the report, which include, but are not limited to, the primary intended purpose of the North Oval and South Ovals at Victoria Park are as sporting grounds. Victoria Park North Oval is not designated as a fenced or a fully enclosed dog play area like that at Gordon Barnard Reserve, and was assessed as being unsuitable for this type of use during Barnard Reserve project scoping works. The installation of the gates has resulted in some dog owners and other park users relying solely on the presence of the gates to contain their dogs and children and not complying with the order of the off-lead controls in keeping animals under supervision and effective control. No change to the off-lead use of the Victoria Park Oval is being proposed. Dog owners will continue to be able to utilise the North Oval for off-lead use by their dogs. Based on this analysis, officers recommend to remove the gates on the North Oval to provide a balanced offering as a shared space between the multiple user groups. It is considered the proposed removal of the gates does not prohibit dog owners and the wider community to continue to enjoy the North Oval at Victoria Park. Council officers are happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mitchell-Moore. Councillors, are there any questions? Yeah. All right, thank you. Sorry, councillors. Before we go to question time for councillors, we actually have two presenters wanting to speak this evening on this matter. Our first presenter is Michael Cochrane. Michael, could you please come up to the microphone? Ned, could you please press so the red light comes on? Thank you. And if you could just sit nice and close so that we can hear your voice. And can you please introduce yourself, your organisation, and the club you're representing here this evening? Thank you.
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair and ward councillors and officers. Thank you for this opportunity. My name's Michael Cochrane and I'm the president of the Q Football Club. However, this evening I am speaking on behalf of all of the tenant clubs who use the North Oval at Victoria Park. So that includes the Q Cricket Club, junior and senior clubs, and also the Q Comets Junior Football Club. So we effectively use the North Oval 12 months of the year during summer and winter sports. We have almost 3,000 members between our respective clubs. We're quite large clubs, obviously, in the municipality. Probably doesn't surprise many of us that many of us are dog owners as well, and ratepayers, including myself. From our perspective, the detailed officer report is quite clear in its terms, and the recommendation. And really, in speaking tonight, we just propose to provide some further support in our agreement with the recommendation in that report. As a starting point, we, as the tenant clubs at Victoria Park, really want to make the point clear that this is not about removing dogs from the North Oval. This is simply about the gates, the lockable dog gates that were installed 5 years ago. We're not seeking to change the off-leash status of the Oval, and owners and their dog owners and their dogs will be able to continue to freely exercise their dogs off-leash under effective control, which is what's required, of course, by the council bylaws. As confirmed in the report, Victoria Park North Oval is the only sporting oval in the entire municipality of some 56 ovals, which is both dog off-leash and fully enclosed with lockable dog gates. It is unfortunate that those gates were installed 5 years ago without any consultation with the tenant clubs, nor was there any suitability assessment performed, as has been confirmed in the officer's report. I don't propose to go through the many issues that has caused, because they are quite clearly articulated in the officer's report. But of course, they have put a massive drain on council resources, from new signage to fortnightly meetings, to increase local officer patrols on training nights and on game days. And unfortunately, despite all of that support...
Excuse me, I just wanted to let you know you've got 30 seconds.
Thank you. The issues have continued, and quite simply, in our submission, the lockable dog gates, the environment that the lockable dog gates create on a fully enclosed off-leash sports oval is untenable. And we say that removing the gates will simply restore equity and balance for all users by simply returning the sports oval to the status quo, in line with all other off-leash ovals in Burundara, and therefore encouraging a safer and more controlled space for all users, dog owners and community sport and young children alike.
Thank you. Sorry, did that conclude your presentation?
I have 30 more seconds, but that's okay, Madam Chair, if you'd like to cut me off there.
Yeah, look, thank you. Now, if you wouldn't mind remaining in your seat, councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Franco.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Prior to the gates being installed, was the park, do you know if it was off-leash? I was trying to gauge that, or did that...
It was, yes.
I'm wondering whether you think the proposal goes far enough to get back to a balance, and whether we should also seek to introduce on-leash requirements to moderate the impact on the reserve and on the sporting fields, which is their primary use.
Yes.
And I'm pretty honest, but to go a bit further, we've got a report, but I'm wondering if that might have merit.
It would be something that we'd certainly welcome further discussion on. We have worked hand in hand with officers, and this is something that's put a massive drain on community volunteers, and the recommendation was that, you know, the dog gates should be the first priority, and perhaps there is a larger discussion there about longer term solutions for dog owners as well. I think you'll see in the consultation, one of the things that come out of that quite clearly is that there is a need perhaps for other spaces. So yeah, we'd be happy to have some discussions about that, but the immediate removal of the dog gates is our priority for sure. Yeah.
Thanks. And just so you're happy with the recommendation as it is in that for the time being, or
well,
additional gates to go as well?
I'm not sure if the recommendation can be changed and voted upon immediately. If
we can put whatever recommendation we want.
Sure. Look, the way that we've approached this matter over several months with council has been the focus on the gates. So I'm not in a position, you know, I'm speaking on behalf of all three clubs, to say much further at the moment.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Stavrou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr Cochrane, one question just to perhaps clarify my thoughts around perhaps whether COVID was the issue or whether the gates. Can you just sort of give me the perspective of the clubs as to whether the introduction of the gates has changed the dynamics, or whether it was COVID that changed it, or was COVID really just exacerbated?
I would say it was the latter, Councillor. This was very, very much an issue well before we even knew what COVID was, and that's well documented at an officer level in terms of all the ground damage issues, the many faeces that community volunteers have to pick up, the conflict issues with community and, just the general safety issues. So, yeah, I think there's a volume of evidence that supports that this was an issue well before COVID, and perhaps it was exacerbated by COVID during lockdowns for sure. But yeah, no, certainly the issue existed prior.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr Cochrane. You may return to your seat.
Thank you all.
Now, Councillor, we have a second presenter, Ben Smith, representing Kew Cricket Club. Ben, if you could please come and take your seat. And if you could just speak clearly into the microphone, please introduce yourself, the club, and the address of the club that you're representing. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name's Ben Smith. I'm the Vice President Senior of Kew Cricket Club. I'm also Chief Tennis Ball Thrower to Toby the Cavoodle. And for 6 months of the year, I pretty much live at Victoria Park when I'm not at home. So I know Victoria Park and its dog owners very well. I know Alvin the pug, who's always wandering around very close to his owner. I know Coda the German Shepherd, whose owner came to watch our grand final a few weeks ago. And I know Bruce, the German Spitz, whose owner used to play for the Kew Comets and was always asking about the footy results. So I have a pretty good understanding of how Victoria Park operates as a shared space. And that's what we're trying to achieve here, is to return to a balanced shared space. Michael expanded on the reasons that the gate should be removed. The other side of the report, I suppose, is some of the community feedback that talks about the positive aspects of it being a shared space and a good space for dogs to be. So I just want to take some of that feedback and highlight it.
And sorry, Ben, before you continue, I forgot to ask you, are you in support of the officer's recommendation?
Yes, in support of the recommendation.
All right, thank you.
So some of the feedback includes, my dog is unable to be off lead in an unenclosed space as he runs away. Dogs can't escape. I use it to contain my dog as it escapes otherwise. These are all evidence of a perception that the North Oval at Victoria Park is a location for behaviour that is contrary to council bylaws and that is directly and clearly attributable to the presence of the lockable gates. Other bits of feedback talk about the positives of the Oval as a dog-friendly play area. I can walk my dog daily and let them socialise with others. Proximity to home and friendly space. The kids kick the soccer ball there while the dog has a run around. All these positive features remain true even without the lockable gates. In fact, one respondent summed this up perfectly. Open space to run around, as is the top oval. The top oval is a dog off-leash space that is not fully enclosed. But this feedback perhaps best sums up the situation. If people don't want to be around dogs, they don't have to go there. If some people don't like dogs, there are plenty of parks that are not off-leash where they can relax and enjoy, and they needn't come to the North Oval. Victoria Park North Oval is, as the Officer report states, a sports oval that is expanded to allow for shared use. The installation of the gates has directly led to the balance, the fundamental principle of shared use, becoming skewed. That's all we seek as the tenant clubs: balance, equity with every other dog off-leash sports ground in the city of Boroondara, and a return to the status quo. The Officer's report clearly outlines all the compelling reasons that the gates should be removed, which Michael expanded upon. Equally, the report and the feedback I've quoted outlines how the gates are directly and demonstrably responsible for the deterioration of dog owner behaviour.
30 seconds, thank you.
At Victoria Park. There is no compelling case for the gates to remain other than to facilitate behaviour that is contrary to council bylaws. Therefore, the gates must be removed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you could please remain in your seat. Councillors, are there any questions for Mr Smith? Councillor Sinfield.
Not exactly a question, but a comment with your indulgence, Chair. Congratulations on your premiership.
Thank you.
Well said. Yes. Thank you. All right, so there are no questions. Mr Smith, please go back to your seat. Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. The first, I'm curious to know if the steps are fully compliant if the gates are removed. the steps from the bitumen path around the northern side of the oval?
Thank you, councillor. We haven't made any assessment on those steps, so we could take that on notice and look further into that matter.
Thanks. I suggest that that should be done before the gates are removed, rather than creating a safety problem. My second question is in relation to a trial period. Have officers considered that if in fact the outcome believed to be likely with the removal of the gates is not achieved 12 months down the track, is there any consideration of replacing the gates?
So we haven't made any consideration for replacing. We feel that the removal of the gates will help us achieve more of a balance with the shared usage of the park, and we're confident that that would be the case. We would continue assessments of the park going forward like we do all other parks through the ongoing patrols of our animal management team and through further engagement with the sporting clubs as well through our sporting and recreation team.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Stavrou.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just a question as to whether, when you've considered the design of the park, have you consulted on any experts, animal behavioural experts and experts in designing parks of that nature, whether an enclosed park is an appropriate way to I guess, have a sporting oval with animals inside off lead?
Thank you, councillor. So I might have to take that question on notice for you. I guess as the manager of the Civic Services team, we're responsible for ongoing compliance with the conditions of the parks and the orders of the dog off leads. So we monitor and ensure that people are compliant with that. But in terms of design of parks, we would need to consult with another department within the council for that.
May I have a follow-up then?
Yes, certainly.
I actually did have conversations with some of the officers. I can't remember the name now. And I think when the Gordon Barnard Reserve was analysed for an appropriate enclosed dog off lead play area, there was expert consultation, and I just wanted to know how relevant this is perhaps in this case, which I think it is.
Thank you. I think I probably misunderstood your question. So as part of the Gordon Barnard Reserve design, there was a consultant practice that helped with the design, and they did consider other locations for suitability, and the report does note that Victoria Park was one of those considered and wasn't suitable. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stavrou. And I see no lights on, so no further questions. Oh, Councillor Sinfield.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, just as a point of clarification, a follow-up to Councillor Stavrou's question. When you say that Victoria Park was not deemed suitable, are we talking about the same location within Victoria Park, the Sports Oval? Because my recollection of that report was, in fact, the non-sporting sections of Victoria Park were assessed for suitability. I just don't want to confuse the issues.
Thank you, councillor. So I've just confirmed that our understanding is the entire Victoria Park area was considered, including the North and South Oval.
My recollection differs. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. And if there's no further questions, thank you, Mr Mitchell. Councillors, I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Stavrou.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. As circulated behind us, thank you. Okay. Is there anyone prepared to second? Yes, Councillor Franco. Thank you. Okay. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sinfield?
I'm opposed for the purpose of debate at this stage.
Right, thank you. And is there anyone else in opposition? Councillor Park? Thank you. All right, councillors. Councillor Sinfield, would you like to speak first?
It's probably appropriate for the mover to do so,
The mover.
Chair.
Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Stavrou.
Thank you for that. I thought I forgot my governance rules there for a moment. Look, thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start by saying that I won't delve into the report. It was an extensive report and a great job by the officers. But look, Boroondara is a great place to live, and here we pride ourselves on being reasonable people, which means that we keep things in balance. That's the key. I do empathise with the many dog owners and feel that you know, to some, that gates bring a peace of mind. I'm also a dog owner, so I know how wonderful companions they can be. But in the spirit of living together in harmony, we need to ensure that everyone in the community can enjoy the sports oval at Victoria Park equally. What we have here is after the gates were installed, that was not proven to be the case. The gate installation changed things. For example, the workload on sports clubs, as we've heard, and they're run by volunteers, that's increased a lot, as has council, and also have other risks after the gates went in. And there's no doubt about that. However, I don't want to focus here tonight on whether the gates were installed with or without consultation, but rather on how we make the best decision for the community tonight based on good governance, due diligence and research. And in the lead up to this paper, Council has conducted the process at the highest standard with an open and transparent community consultation. We see that many responses, which really is proof of that. And as we know, and we've heard before, Council created a designated fenced dog play area at the Golden Barnet Reserve. And at that time, pretty much every off-lead park in Boroondara was considered, in total 52 sites, I believe. And they were considered a suitable location for fully fenced dog play park. And at that time also, 12 sites were eventually selected for further assessment. Victoria Park was excluded in the first round of assessment. And the inclusion or exclusion of each site was done on industry best practices. This also included reviewing relevant expert research and consulting with external experts in animal behaviour. So let me make a final point now. And that is that, let's say if we remove the gates, are there any downside? And I say that there are no downsides because dog owners will not lose any of their rights. You will still be able to take your pooch there as before, off lead, with no change whatsoever. This is really a win-win. It's a win-win for the dog owners and the other stakeholders. And as we've heard, they're pretty much the same group in many cases. And finally, I want to say that this does go into the theme to what I started my introduction, that let's keep the Boroondara tradition of acting in a reasonable, in a community-minded way so that everybody wins. And finally, let me also take the time to thank all the many members of the community for your contribution on both sides of the debate. It is very valuable. And thank the officers in both Mr Walker's and indeed Mr Freer's teams for their tireless work over a long period of time and the excellent report. And ask my fellow councillors to support the officers' recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Stavrou. Councillor Franco, as the seconder, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sinfield, would you like to speak?
I would, thank you, Chair. This shouldn't be a war in the community of those for and against gates or those with or without dogs, and unfortunately it's built unreasonable momentum. It really has got quite out of proportion and become really divisive in the community. I'm concerned that the conversation is centred around dogs, dog ownership, responsible dog ownership and so forth, because it's a much bigger issue than that. The gates seek to protect children from running onto a cricket field. My children have been prevented from running onto the cricket field when there's been some massive Australian bowlers and batsmen having a whack. But the gates have served good purpose for many cohorts within the community, not just stopping dogs getting off the oval, but stopping dogs and children getting on the oval too. I've seen firsthand, and I visit the park numerous times each week, I've seen firsthand how the ovals are used by the community. I'm concerned that the report suggests exclusive use, and it uses those words, exclusive use of the ovals by the clubs, because that in isolation is not correct. It's exclusive use during game and training time. The balance of the time is shared use throughout the community. Yes, they're sporting ovals first and foremost, but they are absolutely open to the balance of the community the rest of the time. I'm concerned that the report presumes the outcome that will be reached tonight. It may well be the officer's recommendation, but it does say in there next steps and presumes the outcome of the meeting, which I don't think is appropriate. Dog faeces on the oval has been an issue since Councillor Healy's children did Auskick. I recount stories of him walking around many, many years ago, I dare not guess how many years ago, with plastic bags as an Auskick parent. I did that as an Auskick parent myself, both at Victoria Park and other locations throughout Burundara, because this is not isolated to Victoria Park. Dog owners, unfortunately, don't monitor, generally speaking, many dog owners don't monitor the activities of their dog in public space, on an oval, on a footpath, on your nature strip, as well as they should, and that's a shame. The issue of gates, I believe, has come to hand largely in the last 2 years in the pandemic, and I would be surprised if the removal of the gates ameliorates all of the concerns that have been raised. I simply don't think that it will. And I urge officers to bring this back to us, or at least to a CB&D in 12 months from now, and work out whether in fact it has solved the problems and whether we can use learnings from this situation for other locations across the municipality. The consideration of Victoria Park as a dog park, my recollection, as I raised before in question time, was that in fact it was not the sporting ovals that were going to be converted into a dog park. I don't think that was ever a consideration. It was the other passive areas surrounding the 2 sports ovals that were considered, and it was eliminated from consideration for various reasons. Gates on the oval is not going to stop dogs being able to smell and hear irrigation under the oval, and they are curious. They will dig to find the pipe and the sprinkler system that sits beneath the surface. So I'd be very surprised if this solved that problem. I don't support the removal of the gates. I supported the installation of the gates about 5 years ago, or whenever it was, and I appreciate that there are mixed and divided opinions on this, but that's my opinion and representative of many people that have reached out to me in recent months about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Franco.
Thank you. I support the recommendation before us, and I support all the comments that Councillor Stavrou made. I think it's very important that we get the balance right here. This is primarily a sporting reserve, and it does have shared use. That shared use is being preserved, and shared use is to be commended. And I think we're doing... We're certainly benefiting the community by facilitating shared use. That does sometimes come at a cost. And compare those ovals that we see across our municipality or sporting reserves in private education facilities that are not shared use facilities. They sit closed off when they're not being used. And that's quite an issue, and it's quite glaring. But we open up our reserves to the broader community, and that's a great thing. But it has to be done in a responsible way. And if we've effectively created a enclosed dog off-leash area, and that's going to, if we don't address this now, we're going to ever increase the issue and the attraction of this place for a separate alternative purpose, and that is going to ever increasingly crowd out the primary use. I'll give one example in this city of Yarra in Richmond that I know quite well. And I say this as a parent I've spent many weekends at Victoria Park and at other ovals, at football matches. And but behind Richmond Town Hall, there's the Richmond Citizens Oval, and that's an enclosed off-leash area, and it's become a dog park, and I've gone there for football matches and see parents take off, or dog owners, and this is a small number, but will take off and go down a Bridge Road and down to the shops to buy a coffee and leave their dogs. And waiting there, almost crowding out the kids. I mean, I've sometimes had my kids and, you know, dog owners are just, as soon as a match is over, letting them out onto the oval, and this can exacerbate the situation. If we don't address the gates issue now, we're changing the balance on what this facility is and attracting it for a different primary purpose. And I think that's problematic. And the gates won't solve all the problems, it won't solve all the dog poo problems, but it can at least start to address one of the key issues that's ever increasingly a problem that articulated in the report. And I think there could be a further discussion about whether off-leash facilities are are appropriate in a sporting reserve. They come at a cost, but look, that's a separate matter, and I appreciate that would go a lot further. But this report and the proposal is very modest, and I think it's something we should support.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillors, thank you for your contributions. Councillor Park, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think perhaps with his last comment, Councillor Franco was barking up the wrong tree. Council is home to about 11,500 dogs, and I think too often it's easy to dismiss dog owners as being all grossly irresponsible and not doing the right thing. Clearly that's not the case, and the arrangements that have been in place for some 5 years have worked quite well in my view, and certainly the feedback that I've got from the local community is that they don't want change, that the steps that were put into effect 5 years ago are fine, and that the status quo ought to be maintained. And that's certainly the approach that I'm taking, so I don't support the motion that's been moved. I think that there's some problems with some of the detail in the report. I won't traverse that seriatim, but I think it's a mistake, and I think yet again we leave the people who own dogs and are looking for appropriate venues to take them, we leave them shortchanged. And that's been a long-standing problem, notwithstanding endeavours of many of us to see that situation changed. It takes years to establish new facilities, as we've seen. In the time that I've been, the long time that I've been here, we've managed to open one. It's wholly inadequate, and here we are seeking to, change the balance. It isn't about getting the balance right. The balance is right, but unfortunately, we're seeking to upset that.
Thank you, Councillor Park. No further questions? I see no lights on. Councillor Stavriou, as the mover of the motion, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I don't intend to take long. I just wanted to respond to a few of the comments that were made. Just Councillor Sinfield's comments. Perhaps the words may have appeared to be rather stronger than I thought they were, because I certainly don't think it's a war on dogs. I have two wonderful dogs. It's our fourth dog in a series, and we love our dogs. And I know a lot of people that go to the park love their dogs too. It's certainly not a war on dogs. It's a question of balance. And I know Councillor Sinfield brought some interesting and important issues up. But I think when we look at balance, we cannot and we must not allow or let the perfect get in the way of the good. Yes, we're not going to get a perfect solution, but we will diminish the problems that exist at no large cost to dog owners, because they will still be able to use the park, allow a very large park, big area, allow their dogs to run around and get the exercise that they absolutely need. And most of the park has got a fence. And you know, if you're there with your dog and you're active with it, I can't see how there'll be a big downside. I really can't see that. Perhaps I can be enlightened on that, but I think a balance we'll be getting closer to balance if we remove the gates rather than not. In terms of, you know, fencing becoming a safety issue of a bigger proportions in terms of, you know, helping kids not run into the ground, look, I understand that. I mean, we all want to make sure that our children are safe, but the same token, roads are dangerous. We don't fence all the roads away. So we just have to really make some of those trade-offs that we must in society. Apart from that, really, I would sort of close and say that I think removing the gates gets us closer to balance. Leaving the gates puts us away from balance. And I'll leave it at that, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Stavrou. Councillors, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Okay. All those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Now we proceed to item number 4, general business. Councillors, are there any matters of general business? No matters of general business. Councillors, are there any matters of urgent business? No matters of urgent business. Confidential business? There is no confidential business this evening. So we'll now go on to close the meeting. But before I close the meeting, I would like to thank all of you that have joined us this evening here in the gallery and all those online, and wish you and your families good health. Thank you, and I declare the Services Delegated Committee meeting closed. Thank you.